Baltimore is a great, fantastic art scene, not just on the artist end, but also on the collector end. So we're hoping with Catalyst, by having a booth there, by bringing these other artists who we think can speak greatly to Baltimore audiences, making the statement that Baltimore has art, and Baltimore has art that should be supported and should be bought, not just outside of the city, but within the city as well.
Liz, it's wonderful to see you, and I am so glad that we could figure out a way to have Catalyst Contemporary at the print fair and representing Baltimore. So tell us about what are we doing?
Hello, my name is Liz Faust, and I'm the gallery manager of a Baltimore-based contemporary art gallery that focuses on art that tells stories called Catalyst Contemporary. This year for the print fair, first print fair, we're featuring two artists from New York, partnered with Pencil Gallery, Rob Swainston and Zorawar Sidhu. They are bringing 10 of their woodblock prints from their Doomscrolling series. Doomscrolling emerged between May 24th, 2020 and January 6th, 2021. Each print is actually multiple prints on top of each other. During the protests in the summer of 2020, many museums, galleries, and businesses in New York City boarded up their windows to protect, their merchandise, their properties, et cetera, because of the protests and the fear of things turning violent. Afterwards, when the plywood was taken off, Rob and Zorawar were able to gather these giant masses of plywood from MoMA, the Whitney Museum, and several other art institutes across the city. In total, there were about 120 woodblocks they ended up making for the entire series of prints, which is actually larger than what's coming to Baltimore. But the main themes of these prints are isolation, frustration, and feeling of what doomscrolling describes as all the negative news and feedback you see on your phone, on social media, the scrolling, and just feeling this doom, but at the same time, having hope and belief that things can improve and things can get better. What Rob and Zorawar did is, after receiving all these 120 pieces of plywood, which is like thousands of dollars worth of wood back then and still today, they started getting ideals and allowed them to really explore different themes that they can touch upon, but also artistically being able to not worry about making mistakes because they are woodblock prints. So they had to carve into the plywood. But since they had so much plywood, they didn't have to worry about the preciousness and scarcity of the material, which allowed for them to try different things.
Didn't they, as I recall, they were using the weatheredness of the wood blocks because they'd been out in, the air and in the city as happy accidents, basically, in the wood block, so that the pressure was off to keep them pristine because they were not pristine already.
Correct. So they used the original graffiti and mark making that was already on this plywood, and they incorporated into the compositions. They also used other images and sources into the composition. An example is for the May 24th piece. They've combined, this one's not in the print fair, so I don't know if I should talk about it, but it's like the first image.
I know, but it's
in
the best
series.
one.
Right? Where you see someone's face lit up while they're holding a phone, but it also has New York Times front page where they printed U.S. deaths near 100,000 and incalculable loss. So they listed the names of those who have died from COVID in May, combined with the rays of light from a Dürer print from 1500. So they're mixing news sources, images, as well as traditional art historical references using the same kind of language, compositions, and pulling from those. So they're combining this new media, both with post digital printmaking, but also the use of images from social media and news outlets to historical woodblock prints and the technique of woodblock printing itself to make a collaboration of new and old meeting together. Another great question that the artist touched about is what's next for them, right? Are they going to, is the series done or are they going to continue? I mean, that's something that they don't quite know yet. When considering themes and subjects of what they were going to cover with the selections, police brutality, the insurrection on January 6th, COVID, the protests, and many other elements get woven in, they were also looking at forest fires in California, gun control, but those themes didn't end up in the prints in the end, so they might possibly go back and do something later on with those. But for them and for us, the role of artists is really to help society to process what we're going through. And the fact that these events, especially in 2020, went by so quickly, and most of which we experienced has not yet been resolved. So bringing them back up in the present for more consideration and reconsideration is important now for both them and for us. So on one level, it has a personal drawing it again and again and again to deal with it. But on a group and social level, specifically looking at trauma, it is a form of group therapy. Part of the process of getting past PTSD for a lot of folks is to be exposed continuously to their triggers, right? To normalize it, to desensitize to it. So that's what doom scrolling is trying to achieve with these prints, both an examination and questioning of, well, did we really fix anything? Did anything really change? But also reducing the panic it induces in a lot of us from everything we experienced in 2020.
The conceptual circle for me is so super tight because they're using the oldest method of reproducing images in multiples to get the word out in multiple layers that echoes this idea of, the speed of the news and this action of doom scrolling. And, the whole thing just wraps up in a amazing package to me. So I'm thrilled that we were able to orchestrate this whole entire thing.
I'm super happy and super honored. And I think that there's really a kind of audience here in Baltimore. We had protests here in 2020, but it was different compared to other cities, other spaces. For us, when we think of protests, we think back to 2015 because that was our protest. That was our aha moment in a sense, I think collectively, bringing together the different parts of the city. So it's interesting when you're in the city and you say, oh, the protest, and you're like, which one?
Yeah, I mean, you could go all the way back to 68, right? Because you still see residue of 68. On North Avenue, there's an empty lot that apparently has been empty since 68. And somebody told me that the other day. I was like, holy cow. All right, so Liz, what else are we doing in the Catalyst booth?
Great question. The artists and the flat files. The flat files will be in our booth. So anyone can come in during the fair, open it up, pull stuff out. Everything will be sleeved, so it'll be safe to touch. Some of the artists will be there some days, talking with people, meeting with people while there. But we will also have the flat files available on Artsy online, as well as images of additional works that can't make it to the fair but are available for people to consider afterwards. We're featuring quite a few of our Catalyst artists that we've worked with before, such as James Von Miner, Joan Cox, Karen Martin, and Sansi Kerms. So a little bit about each. James Von Miner is a very studious, prolific artist who makes these gorgeous, amazing, repetitious, I don't want to say obsessive, but printmaking process where his mark making, he basically etches his time into each of his pieces, looking at math, art history, architecture. So there's a lot of delightful and really fun things within his work. Then we have Joan Cox, who is a female artist. Her focus is mostly on her personal identity as a lesbian woman. And so most of her prints are images, monotype watercolor images of women loving women. Some are more obvious than others, but the whole point of her practice in general is when you see two women together to not just think, oh, they're mother daughter or they're sisters or they're just friends, but also to introduce the question of, are they lovers? Then there's Karen Martin, um, who we showed in the gallery this last winter. Her work deals with environmentalism, landscapes, and more specifically with water. So most of her processes are monotypes, but she's also sometimes soaking the entire paper or staining it in such a way and then printing over top of it. So hers have these really delicate, amazing layers within them that almost seem sculptural in a sense. And then we have Sanzi Kearns. Sanzi is an amazing artist who traditionally works with repurposing print and printing on wedding dresses that have been donated to her. But for the print fair, we're featuring these amazing, really thick handmade paper prints where she uses Scrabble as an inspiration. So hers is looking an examination of color, paper making itself, and but also language and how we talk to each other through games.
It's a great way to introduce the print fair audience to printmakers who are working actively in Baltimore and the surrounds. I think it's going to be really great.
Baltimore is a great, fantastic art scene, not just on the artist end, but also on the collector end. So we're hoping with Catalyst, by having a booth there, by bringing these other artists who we think would speak greatly to Baltimore audiences, making the statement that Baltimore has art and Baltimore has art that should be supported and should be brought, not just outside of the city, but within the city as well.
When we first talked to each other, you expressed an interest in prints and printmaking, and you guys did that print fair in the gallery. So I feel like this is coming full circle. We're able to make it happen and get the people there and the art there. And yeah, I think it's the cherry on the sundae.
It's like, man, it still doesn't feel yet real yet. It's like, oh, this is actually happening. Which is pretty fantastic, and being involved in this is pretty amazing.
Well, we've got a lot of work to do before the fair, but we're going to make it the best fair ever. And we will see all of you in Baltimore.
See you there.